Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. This is season 2, which is all about hiring, and we are here today with my co-host, Annelle Barnett. Annelle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be an amazing podcast. We're going to talk all about onboarding. So onboarding from a marketing recruiter's point of view, onboarding from my point of view, and we're going to bring it together to give you the content you need to make some better decisions in your organization or enhance your onboarding. So onboarding is this crazy thing where I'm assuming that, they get hired, and then what happens at the onboarding experience is maybe not as much as in your purview. Share a little bit about kind of, if somebody's hired, what do you find out about after the fact?
Typically someone is hired and they give anywhere between 2 weeks and 4 weeks of notice to their current employer. And often with the recruiting process, the transition is then in the hands of the employer. In my history, most of the people that I've placed have been very happy with where they've gone, and they're integrated into the organization pretty well. But you hear stories about how people are onboarded or not onboarded, I guess, is probably the better way of saying it. So, showing up on the first day and having no clue what to do. So
I've been there myself personally.
I have too. Yeah. I've certainly been in situations where they didn't even have a computer for me yet.
Right.
And, from an employee's perspective, what's the point of being there if you don't have the equipment and tools to do the work that
Right.
you're going to be doing?
Yeah, we just did a company culture check video, which is our interviews with other companies about their amazing culture. And we did one with Payscape, and they were really diligent in making sure that person's desk was set up, their laptop was ready. They even had their business cards printed on their desks the day that they started,
right.
Especially for salespeople to make sure they hit the ground running because
Right.
there's a lot to get done.
Yeah.
So, pretty impressive compared to some of the places I've been and maybe you've been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sets a precedent. If you walk in and there are no processes, there's no equipment, there's no training or anything for the employee to be engaged very quickly, and they aren't. Then they also adapt that precedent as
Right.
well. So, like you said, with hit the ground running in a sales position, if they don't have the things that they need, then they already adopt a mentality of the things that I need in this organization are not going to be supplied, and so I'm just going to kind of wing it and go with
definitely.
the flow as well. So if you establish those that precedent in the beginning, then it helps people get started and get kicked off quickly and really energized and enthusiastic about the position they have.
Yeah, it's a totally different company culture in that one, is already starting off lagging,
right.
And the other one's accelerating, and you get a vibe for that environment. One's going to continue to accelerate and go. The other one, well, you're probably going to run into things like that all across the board from the company culture perspective, where
right.
Things are going to take a little longer there.
Yeah. And if it's a really good, if I have. I made a mental note of surprise and delight. So you try to surprise and delight your customers. So why don't we try to surprise and delight our employees? And it also works on your behalf from a social media perspective and a building of your employer brand as well. I remember seeing a post on LinkedIn where someone started a new job, and that very first day they had, a huge Apple monitor, an Apple computer, their iPhone. They had, several other things, a coffee mug, and kind of a welcome kit waiting for them when they started that day. And they were really excited about it and really proud of it and posted it on LinkedIn for the world to see. So those kinds of things, beyond integrating the employee into your company, they can also be spread virally through social media.
Yeah, and I think another thing that comes to mind on that is the duration of employment now, right? If you haven't changed your mindset around how you operate and how you onboard based on the new generation and the new tenures, then
Right.
you're already behind. Because if you had this concept that you're a manager and you hire people and they were going to be around for 5 to 8 years on average, then maybe you could afford to spend a little more time onboarding, or things could be a little bit slower. But if you take a tenure now and you say, well, and I don't know what all the averages are in each industry, I know they vary, but if the average tenure is 2 years,
Right.
then you have literally 104 weeks
Right.
of that person.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you start thinking about 104 weeks and they're not even up to speed, and they don't have their laptop in the first week, and maybe they're just getting onboarded in the second week in training. I mean, you've already lost 2. You're down to 100 weeks
Exactly.
to get benefit out of their employment and their time with you. So I think if a lot of people kind of change their mindset, they still have that stake in the ground of people are going to be here for a long time, and they haven't moved that mental stake
Right.
to say, I have 102 weeks to make sure that this is an awesome experience, that they're highly productive, and then they get rolling quickly.
Right. It's also important to socialize the individual within the organization. So, sometimes you start on the first day and nobody takes you to lunch, and you don't know where to go to lunch because you've never worked in that area before. You don't know any of the kind of inside jokes of the company or
Right.
the culture, or you don't know any of the people on your team or in other departments in the organization. So it's really important to socialize them and make sure that they feel welcome, and make sure that they have time with other people in the organization, and potentially even assign a mentor or a buddy to that individual so that they, there's somebody that's always taking care of them, and somebody that they can go to ask the questions about. I mean, frankly, you don't even know where the restroom is.
Right.
So, and you don't know if you're parking in a parking garage. It might be nice to know which floor is the best one to park on to really help, get you in there faster, and where there's always open spaces. There's lots of things that your current employees can tell the new employees, and in order to socialize them and bring them into the organization.
Yeah, definitely. And you got to get them integrated quickly, and make that match very early on.
Yes.
For some reason, it just jumped out at me that 52 and 52 is not 102. Did I say 102 or 104?
I can't remember.
that was either bugging me or somebody on this
Right.
podcast.
I wasn't following the math.
Math is hard.
But
Math
it's
is hard.
good to correct
That's
yourself.
what happens when you're, doing these things on the fly.
Yes.
Silly mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the onboarding perspective, we went over a little bit about the timeline that people have, kind of a navigator buddy system.
Uh-huh.
What are some other ways that you feel that, maybe things are falling down on the onboarding side? Like, have you heard from any candidates where they said, well, this was really a struggle, or this area was a struggle in this environment?
Right.
Are there any other shares that you've gotten back?
Well, I think if a company has standard operating procedures, that certainly helps. That gives the individual something to spend time on in the first week. The other thing is not to just give busy work just to give them busy work. Everyone knows when their time is being wasted,
Right.
basically.
Right.
So they would rather hit the ground running and work on something that actually makes an impact immediately, as soon as they can. So giving hyper-focus types of projects that they can make an impact or succeed on very quickly is a better practice than just giving them stuff to do. I don't think any of us like just having busy work for the sake of having.
No, definitely not. And I mean, we've been doing a lot of generational studies on the impacts of different areas of retention and hiring that we work in. And a lot of the studies that we've been reading say that efficiency is a big part of right now the millennial generation, and even more in Gen Z, because they're so used to being hyper efficient with the tools that they have and getting things on demand that busy work actually really takes away from the value of that company.
Right.
Like it impacts retention if they feel like they get lots of busy work. So you definitely don't want to start off their first week or first day with busy work where they're going to, where somebody's going to get the mindset as an employee like, well, great, I'm going to get lots of this moving forward.
Yeah, it takes away the value of the individual and what they want to contribute to the organization. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and someone brought up something that I thought was really interesting. And his point was instead of work-life balance, it should actually be work-life presence. And so when you're at home or you're, on the life side of your business, or I'm sorry, on the life size of your existence, I guess, right. To be present in that part of your life. And then when you're at work, be present at work. But it's less about, balance of time and more about being present in the situation that you're currently in. So if you're at work, the employer should take advantage of the fact that you're at work, and they are the goal is for them to be present when they're at work rather than working on busy work that frankly they'd rather be at home with their family, being present.
Right, definitely.
Right. So.
Yeah, and I've definitely experienced both sides of that, because when I decided to coach my kids in sports, that was a conscious decision to say, you know what, I work a lot. So I need to be in a place where I don't have a phone. I leave that in the car. I don't have a computer. Like I am on the field. I'm present, and I'm taking that time and, really focusing. And I've also seen it kind of on the flip side as a challenge as, being an employer and having interns and employees. Like we've actually had to add to our onboarding process, like, don't watch Netflix at work, and don't text at work. And we've never gotten so far as like you can't text or have your phone. I know people who've gone that far with it, but you do start to look over and see that like it's not a break, right? The person didn't walk off and take a break and do what they needed to handle for home. It's they're working, but they're texting, but they're messaging on here, and it's like half work, half home stuff. And I know for me personally, I can't be productive that way. I don't really believe that people multitask like they think they do. So we've had to work on systems to kind of check that as well. Like, and how far do you go without turning off candidates, but also how do you reinforce, like, at the end of the day, we have to make money and be focused in order for you to have perks and a paycheck and all of the other things that come into it. So it's been an interesting balance.
Yeah. Being half in and half out on anything is not.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be better to have concentrated effort for a shorter period of time than half effort for a longer period of time. So.
Yeah. Maybe we'll try and like bring it home in some way with like a company event where we all play dodgeball, but they have to be on their phones, and we'll see how it goes.
See if they survive.
Let me see. Like, this is kind of like you're doing a presentation, but you're dodgeball and you have to look at your phone. So I just want to kind of show you how this multitasking thing really works.
That would be a good experiment.
That would passive be aggressive or something.
That would be very telling for sure.
I love it. Yes. All right. Anything else that you're seeing in the onboarding? Or
no, I think that covers
the good stuff.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, for our listeners and viewers, we'd love to think about you to think about your onboarding experience, what kind of value and experience you are giving your new employees, what they feel, how quickly they're getting, up to speed, with the average of maybe only 2 years of tenure and 104 weeks in a year. How are you really utilizing and maximizing that time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.